Listen carefully to our next speaker while she challenges you to think differently about how you define your brand and how you will achieve more by building your own. She started in the agency world where she dedicated her time helping to build some of the most admired brands in the world, including Levi, Anheuser-Busch, the Wrigley Company, and Procter & Gamble. She left her own agency before stepping in to build the brand group for Grainger. There, she led the launch of the company's first national multi-channel marketing campaign focused on customer empathy, which drove double-digit growth in the mid-sized customer in just 6 months. Just 13 months ago, Victoria Morrissey joined Caterpillar as Global Brand and Marketing Director. For the entire span of the career, she has lived and breathed brand. Of her new role, she says, being here feels like coming home, and she feels it's an enormous honor to be responsible for guiding the world's most purpose-driven, iconic brand. Please join me in welcoming Victoria Morrissey to the stage.
Thank
Welcome.
you, Kristen. Thank you so much. Do you have the clicker? Good morning. Thank you, Kristen, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. Good morning. Oh, come on. You can do better than that. Good morning. It's not like I'm after lunch, right? We've got enough coffee in us. I have to say I am incredibly honored and thrilled to have the opportunity to be up here today and share my thoughts at the 5th Annual Women in Leadership Conference, which is in and of itself spectacular. What I was really thrilled about was the theme, right? The idea of building a better world. I'll let you in on a little hint. That's a really good place for a brand to live as a reason to be. So what I'm going to share with you today are some personal stories, some guidelines that I've learned along the way, and how you can think about building your own personal brand. And that will make you not just a better leader, but actually help you create a better world. So as I stand up here today, I think to myself, in some ways, it's actually a miracle that I'm up here. You see, this adorable photo of me shows you at my quietest, most shy. I was shy, painfully shy. I know you find that hard to believe, but I was probably one of the quietest kids in the class. And I was that way all through high school. My goal was simply to fit in. I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I didn't want to go and be noticed. In fact, at my 10-year high school reunion, I received an award on Friday night for saying more that night than I did through 4 years of high school. That is an honest, true story. And so I sit here and I reflect, and I think somehow, though, I got from there to here. And I did it by going my own way. I did it by being more me. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today. And as I reflected and thought about what to share, I started to analyze what was going on in the marketplace. What were some of the real pervasive thinking? And we believe that in order to succeed, you must fit in. And for women, that often means watching how men do things and adapting. Speak louder, talk more, maybe listen less, right? Shut off emotion. But I never wanted to be the same. It was never my goal to be equal to men. And it never was and still isn't my goal to compete with them either. My goal throughout my career has simply been to understand how to best be me. And that means more than just leading like a woman, because as you all know, there's certainly many, many ways to do that. So for me, it became about understanding how to lead like Victoria. And when I think about what really defined me as a leader, I had this revelation that many of the things that women are told are disadvantages actually became some of my greatest advantages. The idea of embracing empathy, truly listening, and becoming comfortable with vulnerability. Brené Brown, kind of an expert in the area of vulnerability, says it beautifully. She says, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage are not always comfortable. but they are never weaknesses. And so when I think about how do you optimize and use the idea of empathy and vulnerability and truly listening and truth-telling and use those to the maximum, you've got to become comfortable with one thing: emotion. Because you see, emotion is the secret ingredient to every one of those things. It's actually the umbrella that sits above them all. The power of emotion has actually helped me become a better leader, a better mother, boss, a coworker. It has actually guided my entire path. Not the absence of emotion, but its very real presence. In fact, I would say that emotion is synonymous with meaning. Name something in your life that has deep and true meaning that is not deeply embedded and rooted in emotion. I can't think of anything. And what was really fascinating to me was when I started to realize that the idea of emotionality is actually the thing that drives the creation of a brand. It is the thing that drives a powerful and sustainable brand, whether that is for a company or whether that is for you personally. And so I started thinking, okay, now I've said brand. How many times, anybody counting? Probably said brand about 6 or 7 times, right? I live in the world of brand and branding. And sometimes I forget that not everybody has the same idea or sense of what that means. And so, in the spirit of getting everyone on the same page, let me take a moment and define what I mean by the word brand before we really dig into what that means for building a worldwide brand and, more importantly, your own personal brand. So Seth Godin, who's a renowned marketer, I think said it quite eloquently. He said, brand is the set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that, when taken together, actually account for a customer's decision to choose one product or service over another. What I love is it's an incredibly dynamic, living, breathing definition. It isn't static, it isn't singular. This is not about a campaign or a logo or any one thing. It is about the fact that together in culmination, the experiences a customer has is why they pick you. And then I thought to myself, I said self, but self doesn't usually answer self, which is probably a good thing. When I thought about the definition of personal brand, I realized that you only had to change a couple of words to actually make this apply to building your own brand. Because you see, personal brand is the set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that, when taken together, influence how someone experiences us. It's why they pick us, it's why they rely on us, it's why they follow us as a leader. Your personal brand is your greatest asset, as it is a company's greatest asset. And if you don't do the work to unpack what truly makes that unique, you will never, ever realize your full potential. Push the wrong button there. Okay, let's get this out on the table. Personal brand. How many of you have heard people use the term personal brand? I know, right? The buzzword. It's kind of gross. Kind of has a little ick factor to it. Sounds a little bit like I'm trying to create something, right? Or cover something up or create a new image. Look, if it's personal, it's yours. So let's just change the conversation and let's talk about this as being your brand. Because your brand is the outward reflection of who you are. It's a combination of understanding your truth, what makes you you, how people engage with you. And at the end of the day, if you really empower that, it is the thing that will make you a great, great leader. So I'd like to spend the next 16 minutes or so talking to you a little bit about the 5 high-level branding principles that I've come to build and learn over my career. Principles that are not just applicable to a corporate brand or a beautiful global brand, but are actually the same exact principles that build your own brand. Each of these build on each other, and they are all deeply, deeply rooted in emotion. So let's get started. 1, know your truth. And if you don't know it, for the love of God, find it. This is not an exercise. It's not surfacey. It isn't about creating something likable or nice or sexy. It is about digging deep down into yourself, into your past, your experiences, defining who you are, what makes you you, and defining your DNA. Because if you don't know your truth, others will not be able to help you. In fact, the only way that you can get to your best self is by first knowing your true self. And when you define your best self, that actually articulates your personal purpose. And your purpose is your guide, that whatever journey you're on or whatever path you're on, it helps you make great decisions. So I want to share with you a story of when I first learned one of my core truths. Many years ago, vice president for new business development at a major global agency, when I made the decision to retire temporarily and focus on consulting. You see, I just had my third child, and I really needed a break from the crazy and intense world of the agency business. You know what people said to me? You're throwing your career away. At this moment, at this point of pivot, at the greatest inflection point of your career, you are leaving everything behind, and you will never come back in any meaningful way. I had no idea what the future was going to hold, but I had uncovered my truth. And that was that as much as I needed my career, at that moment I needed my kids more. Was I scared? Terrified. Terrified. And I will let you in on a secret. The re-entry was awful, much harder than I thought. Filled with fear, doubts, second-guessing. I wanted to quit more times than I can count. But I didn't. And a decade later, I was given the honor of being asked to lead the greatest purpose-driven brand in the world. So not only had I not failed, I had actually used every experience along the way to strengthen my resolve on the first tenet of what defined my brand, which was follow your truth, even when it's at odds of what others are doing. So when I think about the Caterpillar brand, what's our truth? Caterpillar stands for progress. That no matter the job or the task or the situation, this brand lives to make things happen. It's about making things better, challenging to do something new, but it is always something necessary. And when we stray from that, we lose. Because that is the heart and soul and the core of what this brand delivers. I keep pushing the wrong button. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, we know our first tenet. We're going to repeat these a few times. So now you know your truth. The next question becomes, what environment do people experience it? So branding principle number 2 is context is queen. In fact, one of my favorite quotes from a song is, taken out of context, they must seem so strange. Well, the reality is every single one of us is strange taken out of context. Because every single experience in the world is about an interaction with something else. Person, the world, the environment. And it's something I think about regularly. I'll share with you a quick story. About a month ago, I was at an offsite with my leadership team. And we were talking about culture, right? And the desire to build. We really wanted to build a powerful, positive, open, forward-driving culture. And it was a challenge. You see, we'd just gone through some changes. We restructured the department at the end of last year. We had some new leaders. And we were given additional initiatives from leadership to drive. And so we knew we had to get the culture right. But we knew that in order to get there, we had to clear the air on here. And so we used this powerful technique that we call squiggly lines. And I love it because it's just one of those words you never hear, and it kind of describes it a little bit. Look, the premise of squiggly lines is to allow individuals to share their disappointments, frustrations, things they're angry about, all without reproach and without solving. Now imagine, as a leader, how difficult it is to sit in a room, have somebody on your team share a frustration and say, I got the answer. But that wasn't the point. The point of the exercise and the power was actually twofold. One, oh God, imagine how good it feels just to say it, right? Sometimes just getting the words out clears the air. But second, and more importantly, it provided invaluable context. It helped me understand what people were thinking and feeling. And more importantly, it helped me perhaps figure out how to better have a conversation. So we're very early in the journey, a few weeks in, but I will tell you, I've had several conversations over those weeks, some initiated by me, that start with the line, I got a squiggly line I want to talk to you about, which sounds weird, but it's actually created this really open and honest, dynamic environment with the teams. So I have great hope for that power. But I think of context anytime I walk into a big event. In fact, I was backstage and I was thinking to myself, gosh, who's out there? Why are they here? What would they like to learn? What is it I can share that is of value? And those are exactly the same questions that a brand must ask before talking to its customers. Because the power of context for a brand is making sure that you're delivering the right message at the right time. It's about listening and then responding, right? It's about helping, not selling. When you think of the power of marketing, and what I call big M marketing, because it's not an execution or a cost or a tactic, it's the discipline of marketing has 3 key benefits. It's about delivering information that is relevant to someone. It's about building a relationship. And that when the need arises, it's about solving a problem. And if you don't have context of what your customer is thinking, there's no way that you can do that. So now that we know our truth, right, and we understand the context in which that lives, the next step is to figure out how do you build a connection. So the third guiding principle of building any type of brand is empathy is greater than everything. To walk in someone else's boots, right? To really take a step back and understand what they're thinking and feeling. It's hard, right? I struggle with this every day, but I am constantly trying to find ways to set my stuff aside so that I can really appreciate the feelings of my boss, my coworkers, my husband, or my kids. In fact, cultivating empathy is more important than anything. And I think about that when I think about what kind of leader I want to be. I try to listen more and talk less. And empathy has been incredibly powerful in helping me let go of that control that I felt I've had to hold on to for dear life. Now, what about our customers? The embodiment of empathy is shifting from the idea of me, or cat, to customer. What are they thinking, feeling? What are their issues? What are they interested in? Because if we don't understand how they're feeling, we can't solve them. Look, we've always been a customer-centric company, right? And our new purpose statement screams that from the rafters. But what about the role of the brand? What does the brand voice need to be to deliver on that? To create that empathy, to create that connection, and to advocate for our community, our amazing community of doers. The men and women who get up and get it done. Who use their hands and their minds to dig and build and create and make things better. And the voice of the brand has got to change to walk that walk, right? To talk that talk. The tone and the content have got to deliver the promise that no matter what the challenge, we are with you every single step of the way. So now you know your truth and the context that it's expired or engaged in, right? You've hopefully built a healthy dose of empathy. Next, okay, you got to put it in action. You got to do something. You got to make things happen. So our fourth guiding principle, done is better than perfect. Okay, Sheryl Sandberg said this, so I can't take any credit for it, right? But can't you just feel the power of that statement? It's like an exhale, right? You want to say, thank you for giving me permission to let go of my debilitating perfectionist tendencies. And study after study shows that this is largely a female issue, and it's something we deal with for our whole life. We don't answer a question unless we're sure of the answer. I mean, we don't submit a report until we've edited ad nauseum. And we're certainly never going to sign up for a triathlon unless we know we are faster or fitter than we need to be. But let me be very clear. I am not remotely suggesting that you lower your standards. I'm simply saying that everything changed for me when I gave myself permission to not have every single thing I did always be the absolute best. That sometimes I was going to get it wrong, and that was just okay. And when we think about our customers and the world they live in and the idea of done, don't have time to dwell on anything. There's no opportunity to wait for perfect. You've got to make things happen with what you have. Because the world is counting on our customers to create progress and to build that better world. And the role that we as a brand can have is to help them overcome the enemy of inaction. And I think about this when I reflect how important it is to focus on done instead of dwelling on what needs to be. So knowing your truth, the environment it's taken in, you've built some level of empathy, you've committed to action. Okay, now what? Fifth principle. How do you feel comfortable with those decisions? How do you stop second guessing what you decide? And so our fifth principle is really about overcoming the negative impact of somebody telling you what you should do. My son Jack has dealt with focus and attention issues his entire life. Everybody told us to medicate him, to put him in special classes. Would have been faster and easier. And you know what? It's right for many people. And it might very well have been right for Jack. But my gut told me that we at least needed to try something different. Because I never wanted to look back on this and say, God, we really should have. So at the tender age of 8, we started a different journey. Throughout his elementary and secondary school years, we built new reward systems. We worked with professionals to get different forms of encouragement. And we worked to help build skills that he could use for his life to self-manage. And I'm proud to say that just 3 weeks ago, Jack came home from his sophomore year at college with straight A+. And he's here today. And he didn't want me to call him out, but that's the first time I've actually gotten through that without crying. So thank you. Not sure how I did that. He forged his own path, right? He found his own way. And I can say his absolute beautiful personality shines brighter than ever. And I remember that story when I hear those voices, right? The ones inside my head, the voices from the people around me. You know, you really should. Because nothing honest ever comes from doing what somebody tells you you should do versus doing what you know is right. Brands fall to the same should complex. I call this WWJDD, or what would John Deere do? Or put in any competitor that you think. Because what is right for your brand, our brand, cannot and should not ever hinge on what the competition is doing. And that we only really realize the power of that when we stop caring, stop chasing, and actually live in line with our purpose and our reason for being. Lawyer turned social activist turned happiness expert turned New York Times bestselling author Gretchen Rubin sums it up like this. Be Gretchen. You know what that means? That simply means that when faced with fear and doubt and difficult issues and you don't know what to do, there is only one answer, and that is to be yourself. So for me, my mantra is be Victoria. For you, it may be Sally, be John, be Mary. You get the point. Because no one in the world is better at being you than you are. It is actually your greatest differentiator. So in closing, I want to leave you with 2 questions, 2 asks. And all of them are based on the 5 principles of building a brand that we just walked through. First, what are each of you going to do to help build and support and cultivate the most purpose-driven brand in the world, our Caterpillar brand and that of our dealers, to be in service and support of our amazing community of doers? And second, on a more personal level, what are you going to do to become the kind of leader, to have the kind of impact that they remember your name and what you did with them, for them, and how you made them feel? And all of this is possible when we embrace, I'm going to call the magic 4. It's about being comfortable with empathy, truly listening, understanding the power of real good vulnerability, and recognizing that at the end of the day, it all begins and ends with emotion. And if each one of us do this together, we can actually build a better world. One Victoria, or George, or Kelly at a time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I was going to ask if you had any questions, but I have 2 minutes, so it's probably not a good idea.
You can take a question if you'd like.
Okay, I have 2 minutes. Make it easy. Anybody have a question? Yes?
I'm Graciela Romeu.
Great.
Brazilian living in Chile. So, first
Wonderful.
of all,
Great to meet you.
thank you so much for your words. They are so exciting. And it made me think that I've been there before various times. So I was catching myself because I've made some speeches in the past for other women. But it's not a constant, because we can be caught in certain moments of our lives making certain mistakes again, because it's in our DNA, right? But my question to you would be, okay, we have different environments around the world. So US, Canada is one thing, Europe, Eastern, and South America. So the openness for diversity can be quite different.
Sure. Yeah.
So how would approach, or could you share some thoughts of the quota or non-quota as a path?
So I want to make sure I'm understanding your question. Is the question, how do you become a better leader in a place where diversity isn't? I want to make
or
sure.
How do we push through setting up quotas or not?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm a real expert in talking on quotas, but I am a firm believer in when you behave in a way that inspires people and helps people do better work, the tendency of human nature is to follow that. And so I believe those quotas, if you will, really become self-regulated. But what it requires is diversity, right? It requires you to behave and think in a way that doesn't fit in with everybody else, and that's really uncomfortable. And so, to me, the most powerful way to instill diversity is just to begin doing it and seeing the impact and encouraging others to do that. So, I hope that answered your question a bit. I have 8 seconds. Okay, sorry. You can come find me later. I'm happy to try and answer any questions you have. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go back this one?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for providing us such a personal view about building your brand